I didn't get a chance to check the length. I kind of tried, but didn't get a good.
Yes, Tyler in the chat.
I should have chosen a different top. I need to choose a different top. Okay.
David, this head does not want to do anything today. I'm going to do the whole show bold.
Uh-oh. We're you're showing us live.
We're live? Hi, live. Good evening and welcome to Transistance, your weekly talk show and commentary where we talk about things that impact the transgender and transgender adjacent world. We got a lot of neat stories coming up. We are also into Pride Month, and as I, Genevieve Bergman, hand it off to Emily, I'm going to let her celebrate Pride with you all.
I'm so happy that we've reached this part of the year. It's always a really fun time as I get my mic set up here. It's just great to be able to celebrate each other, not only in the trans community but the entire LGBT community. So everybody out there, happy Pride Month. I hope that you're already getting into all kinds of fun events and parades and all kinds of good stuff going on. I have the chat over here to my right, so I will be able to look and let's see. Sorry, make my mic pop a little bit. For those of you on our Discord, well, for those of you not on our Discord, like why? We'll put a link in the chat to our Discord. But that is our community where all of our members are together talking and doing all the fun stuff. In the announcements channel on the Transverse Discord, I posted a couple days ago some Pride backgrounds for your desktop. So go check those out and download one of those and make your desktop all wonderfully gay.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, there's fun stuff for y'all. I still haven't made a social media post about it, but we will do all that soon. The other thing I really wanted to talk about really quickly that I stumbled onto today, there was a there's an organization. Let's see, am I going to find it really easily? The National Center for Trans Equality conducted a survey in either 2015 or 2016 of transgender folks trying to put together information about us, and they are working on a 2020 survey, and so I think that's really important for us to take part in to make sure we get as many respondents as possible. The more representation we get, the better we're able to stem this tide against us, to prove, hey, we're here, there's a lot of us, stop being buttholes. So that's something that's very important to me. I will put a link in the chat as soon as I get over here. I have it here on this computer, but the chat's on that computer, so I've got to find the link over there, and I will put it in chat. But please, if you can take some time, if you're part of the transgender, non-conforming, non-binary, two-spirit, intersex community, basically anything gender non-conforming, please take the time to. This isn't taking the survey. I'm sorry. This is pledging to take the survey, and then at some point when they're ready to do it, they will send it out to us. So I'll put that link in chat. Thank you for that. And let's go ahead and jump into our articles.
One thing, Emily,
Yes.
there's a comment in there that I wanted to get your professional take on. Okay,
Okay.
how does one stop being a butthole?
See, the thing is I don't quite get how some people have so much skill and talented to not only be a butthole, but to keep it going constantly. It's like a constant
Yeah.
thing. I would think that that is so much work to be that much of um, just a bad person.
So,
But we'll be
where,
talking about a couple of the ones that are very successful at it tonight.
but I'm just curious if someone is a butthole, that
Hmm.
consistency, okay,
Yes.
and they
Mhm.
have an emotional eruption, does that make them also a hemorrhoid?
Oh, very much. Yes.
Okay, cool.
That's a better description for our two favorite anti-rights queens that
Yes,
we were
that'd be
talking
good.
about later. Okay, remembering that for later. We'll story that.
Oh,
We'll store that away.
we got something to do here. Let's do that.
So let's. God, what was it? Oh, what was it? It wasn't Van Wilder, was it? I think it was Van Wilder, where one of the guys was talking about hemorrhoids and what you do with them. Anyways, somebody find me that quote. Let's
You've
move
heard
over to Scotland to start off here, where Scotland's gender recognition reform is a recipe for bad law, say campaigners. What's going on here? That's a confusing headline for me.
So we have covered the UK quite a bit and the issues of the UK, basically removing trans access to medical care, removing trans access to public spaces, documentation, all of those type of things. Scotland, on the other hand, um, has been trying to bring more recognition for gender diversity. The proposed gender recognition form, which is supported by every party in um, let's see in Holyrood, um, basically has brought out this argument that anything that anything that makes life easier for trans people is going to make things harder for quote unquote normal people. Um, they're trying to streamline the process to change legal sex. Um, but there were concerns being raised about cis women excluding themselves from women only services over fears of encountering a transgender individual, and suggested that young people were being confused by celebrities who come out as queer and binary. So you know, what we're basically seeing are these groups are rising up and saying anything that leads to any gender reform within Scotland is only going to create more problems for Scotland.
Mhm.
So, this is the same stuff that we're seeing. Scotland has been progressive. Scotland has been moving toward trying to make things more accessible for transgender people. But there is a group now rising up within Scotland,
Hmm.
For Women Scotland, that is basically saying, um, if parliamentarians are saying to the people, we believe that the only criteria as to whether you're a man or a woman is self identity, it then becomes increasingly harder for individual organizations to have a policy that is in opposition to that. Parse that statement out very closely. The reality then becomes that the person making those decisions is often a lowly paid receptionist at the sports center who is trying to tell someone they can't go into a woman only session. So, Susan Smith, who is a part of the campaign group for Women Scotland, is saying this: if Scotland brings about gender reform, it will be harder for individual organizations to segregate.
Hmm.
It becomes increasingly harder for individual organizations to have a policy that is in opposition to that.
Hmm.
Essentially, they're saying that if gender reform happens in Scotland, we can't be segregated against transgender people.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a law that makes it harder to discriminate against people.
Right. I mean,
And
isn't that just, horrible that we would try to pass laws
hmm
here or Scotland or anywhere else that would get rid of discrimination?
yeah, it's part of our evil plan, right?
That's right. We're taking over the world.
Taking over the world with equality and acceptance for people.
Don't give away the plan, Emily.
It's too devious to give away. We've got to keep it tight secret. Ah,
Autumn
she.
says transgender Jim Crow. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Whew. Great. Cool, cool, cool. Well, no, it's to be expected, right? I mean, there are bad actors everywhere. There are always people that come out against things that are right and positive, and it's just so shocking to see the level of the amount of people that are so willing to remain uneducated
Yeah.
about what trans people are, who they are, and why. And they just like to cling to these bad ideals of what we are,
Hmm.
and just stick to that and say, okay, we're just dangerous deviants out there to molest and rape everybody, and they don't want to move beyond that and actually learn what it's about and create policies along those lines,
Right.
or as we'll talk about later, jokes along the actual lines of what are happening here.
Exactly.
Moving on to somebody, JD Vance, who wants to outlaw adult entertainment instead of assault weapons, and the jokes write themselves, says
Right.
this editorial here.
So JD Vance is running for Senate, and he had um, he had said that um, he wanted to ban adult content, and Josh Hawley was another senator, which we have talked about Josh Hawley a number of times because he's just as bad. But Vance said that I think the combination of adult entertainment, abortion, have basically created a really lonely, isolated generation that isn't getting married, they're not having families, and they're actually not even totally sure how to interact with each other. Um, so he wants to ban adult entertainment so that people will basically learn how to interact with others again.
Cool. It's a good thing he's figured out why why people aren't interacting and why they're not having sex and making babies. I
Well,
mean,
and I think what I really believe, okay, is I see you, Tyler. I see you, hun. You are definitely, on his list, okay? But here is my bigger, this is what I really think is happening here. JD Vance still doesn't know where the clitoris is, and he wants to blame porn on that.
oh, I really want to take us on a tangent, but I can't, so I won't. But um,
Because you know that I'll take that tangent right into the gutter.
no, okay. Well, I can't allude to it, and not at least mention it. I was listening to something on NPR the other day that said that it was a deep dive into interesting choice of words when you find out where this is going into the vagina and the reproductive system of women and trying to understand it beyond just making babies and the myth of the purely vaginal orgasm um, because of the way the parts work. Like you need clitoral stimulation.
No, you
Uh,
don't.
and so, anyway, so if you can't
I
find the,
don't.
if you can't find it, then his poor wife.
So, I mean, let me just stop you right there. There is no myth of it. It is possible for some vagina owners to actually experience climax through stimulation
Mhm.
of the vagina. And it's like anybody who says differently is only talking to a small group of people.
Mhm. Yeah, the myth is that it's possible for all women, and that like yeah,
Could be.
um,
Could be.
and so anyways, it was I found that very interesting, and like I said, the his poor wife.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I don't really even know where you can go with this. That's just it's very silly. So
Yeah.
let's move over to the majority of Republicans and their tweaked beliefs. Republicans say trans people are making kids trans. They are fully bought in on this grooming idea,
Yeah.
and that LGBT books and the like are what are making LGBT people. What's going on in a deeper dive here, Jeannie?
So the Southern Poverty Law Center, which if you're not paying attention to the Southern Poverty Law Center, you should be, because they are out there finding these groups that are controlling and influencing policy and coming at them from a position of limiting or removing the rights of individuals, not just those within the BIPOC community, but also within the LGBTQIA plus community. So the Southern Poverty Law Center took a poll and found that for conservative, right leaning people, there is a widespread feeling that transgender people with the gender ideology that we possess pose a threat to children and society at large. Now, um, the basis of this is something that is called the white. It's a white nationalist idea. It's called the Great Replacement theory,
Hmm.
and the idea is that eventually these marginalized groups are going to continue to grow, and they're going to continue to propagate, and they're going to extend themselves into culture that they will replace cisgender, heterosexual, white, middle class people. Now, the great replacement theory has been used against blacks, it has been used against the Hispanic community, it has been used against the poor, it has been used against liberals, it has been used against any group that they feel like is threatening their way of life. And right now, they have been on a kick to basically say, and Marjorie Taylor Greene loves talking about this. We'll get into it in just a little bit. But her thing is that, basically in 5 years, there won't be any straight people left.
I
That be
can't
a serious
can't
world.
wait to dive into that level of crazy.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, do you remember? I don't know how. big Adam Carolla is on your radar, but he wrote a book not too terribly long ago, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, about in 20 years we'll all be chicks. About basically pushing back
Uh,
on the feminist movement and the political correctness and all that. And it's just like, oh, getting in touch with your feelings and how horrible that is, I guess, for everything.
right.
Um, yeah, there are examples of this buy-in on replacement theory just everywhere. It's a very strong political tool, a very strong political fear tactic that they use.
Well, and it's typical. It is what you get when you have a power that is dominant and has held that dominance for an extended period of time, and then as that dominance begins to wane by natural
Hmm.
attrition, and whether that be through intermarriage, interracial marriage, whether that be through the expanding of science or the development of new understandings of sexuality or gender or any of those things, that is going to threaten the
Hmm.
power. And this goes all the way back into so many different cultures that we can see, when the dominant group is threatened, the replacement theory comes into play.
Hmm. And the way that the political powers have used it very successfully is they've made the general population believe that that is something that affects them,
Right.
when in fact it only really affects the people in power.
Exactly.
We'll see, we're starting to see more women in politics, we're starting to see more people of color and different orientations
Yeah.
in the government. So the powers are being replaced with more open and accepting people that are more rights minded, that are more in line with the idea of the rights of all people than the people who have been in power. But they are grasping to hold on to that by saying they're trying to replace you, and they're talking to their constituency when in fact it's really just about them. And
Yeah.
it's sad that they've done such a good job of making people fearful of each other in this
Mhm.
country.
Absolutely.
You mentioned last week the myth that leaked out because of a similarity in a name between the Uvalde shooter and a trans person.
Hmm.
Um, a GOP politician says that the Uvalde shooter was transgendering. And okay, okay. So there's no reason to ban AR-15s. Like I said, you already mentioned this myth and its propagation here. We're still on it. And what is this article a little bit deeper here?
So Michelle Floor or Flore, I'm not sure what, is an elected official in Nevada, and she is the state treasurer and a council member for the city of Las Vegas. This is so. This is just a follow up on how the story, which did not get denounced completely last week, is continuing to spread in ignorance. What she said is, I have to tell you what happened in Texas is horrific. All the liberal media is going to tell you, oh, it's guns, it's guns, it's we've got to ban AR-15s. No, we don't, she said. Then she began to rant about the pharmaceutical industry, which she claimed was giving kids psychotropic drugs. She says no one wants to talk about the drug issue, adding that the shooter in Uvalde was on psychotropics, although there is no evidence of this anywhere. But then she went on to push that the shooter was on a lot of different medications from transgendering, so his mind was quite defective. Um, this is this is what happens when ignorance is allowed to be elected. because this is an individual who does not bother reading before opening their mouth. First of all, transgender affirming medications are not psychotropic drugs. Second of all, anyone who is mentally ill is evaluated on what type of drugs they need. Not everyone is receiving psychotropic drugs for their mental illness. So if we grant that the Uvalde shooter was mentally ill and they were on medications, there is no necessary guarantee or connection that those medications were psychotropic. But it has been disproven that this individual was a transgender person. Therefore, they are not on transgender affirming medications. And this person wasn't even in the mental health care system. So if they were on anything, they were illegally obtained.
Oh, I thought there was there a second article that touched on this? I thought there was. I guess not.
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
she.
Let's go ahead and move on to San Francisco and their initiative to unveil a $6.5 million plan to eradicate trans homelessness. Sounds good. What's going on?
Yeah, it really sounds great. San Francisco has a tremendous homeless issue. They have been trying to work on something. Emily was telling me when I was out in her area last year that a lot of people have been moved out of the San Francisco area and they've drifted down south. And so they're now beginning to take up the public spaces along the Southern California beach fronts and the areas that have been very popular as tourist destinations are now pretty well shared with the homeless population that has been displaced from San Francisco. So it's been a major issue for some time for San Francisco. Mayor London Breed has proposed a 5-year plan that will amount to a $6.5 million effort. The plan would see the mayor's team work with transgender and gender nonconforming homeless groups on housing and community development. And it would seek to house approximately 400 trans homeless individuals in the city, as well as future homeless individuals. And it would do it through, raising the money through long-term investments and through to be able to bring money into the city's housing subsidy pool program. The program would also buy and set up new permanent supportive housing for trans people, with queer youth being the priority. Mm-hmm. Mayor Breed said transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming San Franciscans are 18 times more likely to experience homelessness compared to the general population. We know that the rates are even higher for our minority trans communities. So $6 million would be spent over 2 years on short-term rental subsidies, and then $500,000 earmarked for behavioral and mental health services for the homeless or at risk of homelessness trans individuals.
Mm-hmm. Talked about this a couple times here, or within the Transverse, that one, this is a big passion of mine. The fact that the astonishing numbers of trans people who are homeless, especially trans youth, and the studies that you read and hear about that say that the number one way to fix homelessness is to give homeless people homes. I mean, I know it seems like a silly obvious solution, but it really does work to help break the cycle of poverty. There are plenty of homeless people that have mental health issues, and so having the mental health service as part of that is a wonderful thing. But just the fact that the trans community has a high rate of being kicked out, disowned, having a hard time finding employment. Mm-hmm. So it's a very big issue in our community. So this is great, and I'm hoping that they do this right. It's interesting to hear that they're doing rental subsidies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we'll see. I've toured a couple places. One was in San Diego where they had it was a building they had for housing homeless people. There were multiple tiers in it, of different room sizes. Some had roommates or whatever, depending on the mental health needs and the particular needs of the person. And they had all the services there, job placement and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully they're using that model and will institute it. But our community definitely needs it. It's really important.
Yeah. And, you know, we also know that San Francisco now has a trans neighborhood that it was basically built around trans people, non-binary people, and it is about bringing them all into a central area that's a community. So
Mhm.
San Francisco is definitely trying to make a difference in transgender and non-binary homelessness.
That's interesting. You talk about that, and it's like, oh, it's great that there's a community for trans people, and that's awesome. I worry about the segregation of that, like the kind of like natural like clumping together, clicking, and not being mixed in with the population and just accepted with the normal population. But a place, a safe space for trans folks is a
Honey,
big.
we're talking about San Francisco. We're talking about Haight Ashbury, where it's all the hippies hanging out.
Mhm.
We're talking about Little Chinatown. We're talking about where everybody is already clicking. It's just down in the district where the transgender district has risen up. It's just giving them a community, a neighborhood, so to speak.
I love it. I want to go visit.
I do too.
All right. Moving on. Gay congressman calls out the GOP bullshit that gets kids slaughtered in schools. I
Yes.
haven't heard this speech, but what is Mr. Ciccolini?
Cicilline, I don't know. I'm not up on my um, Italian names very well, but Representative David Cicilline from Rhode Island was listening at a House Judiciary Committee meeting on House Resolution 7910. It is the Protecting Our Kids Act. It would bring several transformations to gun regulation, like raising the age limit for semi automatic rifles. It would make firearms more easily traced. It would encourage safe storage of firearms. Um, and there have been people who have been talking this down and trying to basically talk about how this is going to keep someone from experiencing their Second Amendment rights. So Cicilline, asked, who didn't have due process, who didn't have their constitutional right to life respected, the kids at Parkland and at Sandy Hook and Uvalde and Buffalo, and the list goes on and on. So spare me the bullshit about constitutional rights. And then another congressman was trying to get him to yield his time. And Cicilline stepped up and says, no, I will not yield. And I will not yield for my entire 5 minutes. Do not ask again. And just went into a space of saying, this is bizarre. This is ridiculous. We want to talk about Second Amendment gun rights. Great. Let's talk about that, but let's put that into context. Let's put it into the context that in the last 10 days, there have been 3 shootings that were mass casualty. Let's keep that in context when we have had multiple school shootings. I saw a number where the number of police officers killed in the line of duty is 1/10 of the number of kids who have been shot in schools. Let's talk about context. Let's talk about the Second Amendment rights when we have over 1,500 kids who were shot in their school. That is the context that they want to leave out.
Mm-hmm.
They want to put it in the context of the Constitution says this, yet most of them cannot quote the full entire Second Amendment word for word. They know how the amendment applies to them, but they do not know how the amendment is written in the Constitution. They talk about knowing the Constitution, reading the Constitution, living by the Constitution, yet they cannot read the damn thing, nor can they quote it word for word. And they want to continue to throw their ignorance around, and they say these rights must not be infringed upon. They don't know what right they are talking about. And in addition to that, they are removing the rights of people under 18 years old to be able to get access to a free education. If this continues, the Second Amendment right supporters will eventually create a place where public education is not accessible. You will have to pay for a security fee to be able to have a safe school. This is absurd.
And we talked about it on the show last time, right? That or maybe not. Maybe I just heard somewhere else, but they were talking about what they want to do is they want to basically militarize the schools more, have more guns in schools, have more fences and security guards and metal detectors and all of that. And that's the solution. Again, more guns, more, and ignoring the fact that the Uvalde school is actually pretty well locked down, and the shooter got in a back door.
Mm-hmm.
And my family moved. We had the privilege to be able to move, but my family moved from a neighborhood where the school I was going to go to had police there every day and an iron gate around it the whole way, because my parents didn't feel safe with it. And I totally agree with that. I think it has the opposite effect. It doesn't make you feel safe. It makes you feel unsafe. It makes you feel like you need to carry a gun, that you're not safe going there.
So, um, I I had a change of heart over the weekend. I'm not going to lie about this. I'm not going to hide this. Um, Over the weekend, I decided that I'm going to have to purchase a personal defense weapon. I hate that decision. I despise that decision. But I sit here week in and week out and I read all of these news stories of how conservatives, right wingers, and Christian extremists want to eliminate us. And as I sit here and I read these stories over and over and over again, I feel threatened. Threatened to the point that I am going to give up my moral choice to stand against carrying a weapon. I'm a pacifist, Joe. When I talk about being a pro-life individual, that means that I want people to have equality of life. I am a pro-abortion person, but I want everyone who is alive to have the best life they possibly can. That's what I mean by pro-life. I want everyone to be able to walk freely and experience a life in this nation, to be able to stand with their head high and be able to walk down the streets without fear and be able to anticipate and receive the blessings of this nation as it was created to do. But now I feel threatened. And I feel threatened to the point that I do not believe that I can maintain my moral opposition to carrying a weapon.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way, especially after we read stuff like we did last time about right wingers that are actively looking to target folks during Pride Month.
Yeah, absolutely. Shannon, I hear you. That's what a friend of mine says. She is so far left, she got her guns back.
All right, so let's move on to Florida. Um, Florida Florida says happy Pride by proposing an end to Medicaid coverage for trans adults.
Yep.
Just ending healthcare coverage period for trans people, not trans coverage, not transgender care coverage, but health coverage for trans people.
So there's two other articles that go with this one, Emily.
The Florida package. Let's go.
Ron DeSantis directed the Agency for Healthcare Administration in Florida and told them that they are to remove access to gender affirming care for kids, but anyone who is also on Medicaid would not be able to have their care provided for. Let's see. Let me pop over to this article. Florida Surgeon General Joseph Lopatto requested that the State Board of Medicine prohibit gender affirming surgery for minors, along with gender affirming treatments. That we knew. But it went on to explain that anyone who was receiving the June letter said that to support the healthcare needs of trans people would be to follow a preferred political ideology instead of the highest level of generally accepted medical science. I encourage the board to review the agency's finding and the department's guidance to establish a standard of care for these complex and irreversible procedures. This letter was sent after the release of the report authored by DeSantis and the state secretary, Simone Marstiller, which attempted to justify the exclusion of gender affirming healthcare from Medicaid coverage. The idea that they have the right to remove healthcare is essentially infringing upon adult rights. And they are targeting those who use Medicare or Medicaid to be able to afford their transition care. DeSantis can do this without legislative approval. It is an effort to once again strike against the it's a strike against the ability of transgender people to access care that improves their quality of life.
Yeah, it's so strange that the people who reject science, reject medical fact, are the ones that are in charge and making these policies.
Right.
And that the healthcare professionals know the truth and know the facts, and they're like, we're here to help you.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if the political powers can remove your license, you can't practice. You can't help anybody.
Right.
And it's I don't know.
So somebody made a comment on TikTok that I really want to address. The statement was made, taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for my transition. So I'd like to address that very quickly. I shouldn't have to pay for the care for lifetime smokers who have COPD, who have emphysema, and who have to be on oxygen and supportive care until they go into the hospital where they have to have life extending treatments because of their choice to become addicted to cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
I should not have to pay taxes for the children who are maimed by shooters just because they were not fortunate enough to have their life ended, because governments will not do anything to protect children adequately from violence in their schools. I should not have to pay for people who insist that they deserve all of their health care covered just because they are white, and then turn around and try to remove equal access from the BIPOC community. If we're going to talk about who the taxpayer should not have to support, believe me, those fingers go in every direction.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Moving on to more state news. I think we've if we can just move on from Florida because my God, we'll keep you posted on this and how this goes. But that statement you made that DeSantis can make these action can do these actions and make these comments and have people follow them
Mhm.
without any legislative action is what we've seen in other places, and it's also terrifying. So we'll
Let me give
tackle.
you the great rebuttal of this political genius. That makes no sense. Thank you for making my point completely. Okay, continue on. Sorry.
Ohio Republicans advance bill requiring genital inspection to enforce trans sports ban. They want to look at kids inappropriately. This
Yeah.
is this is so bizarrely hypocritical and hilarious. What's going on here in the deep depths of this article?
Exactly what it sounds like. We are very, very used to the trans sports bills um, that would keep transgender kids from playing sports in the gender that they are identified with. But this bill goes one step further. Florida had tried to do something like this, but the this measure would ensure that schools, state universities, and private colleges establish single-sex athletic teams and sports for male sex, female sex, or co-ed teams. The bill would also require any students whose sex is disputed to provide a doctor's statement verifying their internal and external reproductive anatomy. The physician would also need to confirm the student's normal endogenously produced levels of testosterone and perform an analysis of the participant's genetic makeup.
Ooh. You know what that might actually do is
Uh,
that might discover a lot more intersex folks and folks who aren't the gender that they're going to try and say that they were.
right? Exactly. There is only one trans girl in the entire state that is participating in high school athletics in Ohio.
Mhm.
They are going to all of this length of trouble to remove one trans girl.
Hmm. Without proof or precedent of something nefarious happening,
Yeah.
someone being attacked, or
Yep.
any of that kind of stuff, or unfair advantage in the sport in any
Right.
way. It's it's just the ultimate witch hunt.
It is, and this is, basically it is legislating and outlawing an individual for existing.
Let's see. GOP governor vows to sue Biden administration so state can legally discriminate against trans kids. Here we go again with the fighting for your right to discriminate against people, fighting for states' rights to be
Right.
able to limit the rights of its citizens, all of this stuff. What's going on here? And what state are we talking about?
We're talking about everybody's favorite South Dakotan, Christy Noem. Um,
Okay.
so she is shooting for the White House herself. She's kind of pushing to get her name on the ballot for presidential election. But a new Department of Agriculture rule would promote trans equality in schools. Noam said President Biden is holding lunch money for poor Americans hostage in pursuit of his radical agenda. He is insisting that we allow biological males to compete in girls' sports or else lose funding for SNAP and school lunch programs. South Dakota will continue to defend basic fairness so that our girls can compete and achieve. So, in essence, the thing is that the governor of South Dakota has decided to stand against a presidential declaration that says that no states will receive extra funding if they have discriminatory principles against transgender youth.
That's wonderful. That's a great way of dealing with it. Just saying, yeah, if you've got policies in your state that discriminate against people, then you're not going to receive our funding.
Yeah.
And I would think it would be more successful if it wasn't aimed at trans folks or trans kids. Just say if you have policies that discriminate against people, then your funding's at risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving over to New York now for some positive news. New
Yes.
York ID cards will soon feature the X gender marker option.
Yeah.
Yay! Let's
Yeah.
go to binary.
Yeah. If you are in New York, you will soon be able to get an X gender marker on your ID if you are non binary or transgender. This announcement was made on Friday that the new option will be available on driver's license, learner permits, and non driver IDs issued by the DMV across the state. So this is not just New York City, this is the entirety of New York State.
That's great. That's so great to hear. I love that.
Yeah. And the governor made sure to take notice, as we prepare to celebrate Pride Month in a few days. I'm excited to announce this historic change that represents another major victory in our fight to help ensure equality and respect for the LGBTQ plus community.
Well, then I just we've talked about this a lot, and a lot of the focus is on trans and trans youth,
Yeah.
particularly the main fight is against trans women.
Yes.
So male to female transgender folks, and I
Mhm.
just love these things that come up, these wins that we get that are for the other siblings that we have, the gender non-conforming, non-binary, agender folks that are not, they're just being ignored and forgotten about in all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good thing that they're not getting particularly attacked, but I just
Right.
love these little wins. This is wonderful.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, let's be honest, when we are dealing with all of the crap that is coming against us, transgender women, we are being basically the cannon fodder. Um, we're the ones who are going out there, and intersex people, non binary people, trans masculine individuals, they are the ones being ignored. Their voices are not being listened to. And as Dragomora says, being invalidated, that there's no such thing as an intersex person,
Hmm.
or there is no such thing as non-binary. There is no such thing as any of these, you know, experiences. We get to be out front because we pose the biggest threat to normality, and that is that we pretend to be women. I mean, that's the cry. We pretend to be women, and we are the bigger threat.
Hmm.
A trans masked person is not a threat because women are smaller, men are bigger. Women are weaker, men are bigger and stronger, and therefore a trans mask individual is not a threat to a male, which is bullshit. Um,
If I ever expressed this opinion, this epiphany I had on this show, I can't remember if I have or not, that I'm surprised that so many people, so many men in power are behind this myth about trans people, because basically what it says at its base, when they're talking about trans women,
mhm,
because trans women have penises and therefore women in spaces with them are not safe, because the underlying thing here, and this is why it shocks me, is that people with penises are rapists.
yes,
And this is an idea that men are willing to perpetuate. And I
yes,
just find that really interesting. But maybe it's not as interesting when you transpose that idea with the number of people in these powerful positions who are being investigated or have been charged with sexual assault and things like that.
yeah.
Um,
It,
so
it is projection and deflection, is what it is. Because as long as cis white men can continue to perpetuate the myth of predatory transgender women, predatory black men, predatory Hispanic men, I mean, all of these individuals, they are the ones who have been flagged as violent predatory individuals. Black men, Hispanic men, transgender women. When we go through the roll call of state and federal politicians and we find the number of SA as sexual assault or sexual harassment or actual rape, we see these numbers being checked off bit after bit after bit. And it's just like the situation, we are accused of being pedophiles, predatory pedophiles. And yet we have a sitting member of the House of Representatives who is currently under investigation for trafficking of a minor. As long as they keep yelling and yelling and yelling, look at the monster over there, they can continue to be the monster where they are.
mhm.
You really got me in a night here, Em. I'm just not going to lie. You got me in a night here.
um, yeah, and I had a follow up point, and it's escaping me, and I swear it was a really good. Oh yeah. So I put together a video, and I have yet to release it. I've got to put some graphics over top of it to polish it and get it ready. But it's dispelling 5 myths about trans people, and the I ended it on, and I like the point, and I can't really quite remember how I worded it on there, but the final myth was that trans people are a threat.
Yeah.
And I said, well, there is some truth to this because trans people are a threat to the misogynistic culture that keeps the white men in power. Because when you blur the gender lines and trans women can be seen as women, and it's just typical trans women typically are raised male, and so they've got a lot of the male characteristics of, like, they're not demure and they're not quiet. They're not taught to hold back and not share their opinions. We are bold. We are powerful. We are out there, and we will help in a massive way eliminate the idea that there is a weaker sex. We
Yeah.
challenge that and basically blow it out of the water, because it's like, no, everybody can be equal. Everybody has power. And that is, that idea of the weaker sex is, and perpetuating that keeps them in power. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
challenge that in a massive way. And of
Yeah.
course they're scared.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, they're scared. White old politicians are scared to death right now
Mhm.
because they know that their time is done. Old white male politicians know that their time of control has come to an end. And this is why they are fighting tooth and nail against reason and logic to try and put structures in place so that if they can't be the ones making decisions, they can at least make it impossible for anyone else to have an equal say.
Okay, we were talking earlier about hemorrhoids, and let's address a couple. Um, Lauren Boebert accuses the left of grooming kids because a teacher used LGBTQ flashcards. LGBTQ flashcards, awesome! I love that. I need to find those and put them up on the Transverse store. But Jeannie, take this away and tell us about what's going on here.
So we talked about the preschool teacher in North Carolina last week who was using pride themed flashcards. And that teacher left their job. Lauren Boebert, who loves to just prove how much she can say, um, went. This is what she sent out on Twitter. A North Carolina preschool is using LGBT flag flashcards with a pregnant man to teach kids colors. We went from reading Rainbow to Randy Rainbow in a few decades, but don't dare say the left is grooming our kids.
I I love this. And you've addressed this point directly, that grooming means grooming for sexual exploitation.
Correct.
Um,
Grooming is a set of manipulative behaviors that sexual predators use to gain access to potential victims and then begin to coerce them to agree to an abuse and to kind of help them minimize the amount of risk, talk to them about how they shouldn't tell people, how they should keep things a secret, and then continuing to discuss with them subjects that will, just increase their exposure to sexual activities.
mhm.
Now, we are being accused of grooming children, and the one thing that makes the difference between what we are doing and what they're accusing us of, groomers behave in secrecy. We live in pride.
Mhm. Yeah, and I just it's I The logic always escapes me with a lot of these things, because just showing that people exist is in their mind grooming, is
Hmm.
in their mind indoctrinating. It's just like we're just showing that people exist and that it's okay for them to exist. Like you don't have to hate people that are different than you. That's all it says. And
Yeah.
yet that is grooming for all of these horrible things. Whatever.
Yeah.
Next up, our other anti-rights queen. Um, she loves you know railing against women's rights too. Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks straight people are going extinct. Yes, she's completely bought into the replacement theory. What's going
Yeah.
on in this one, Jeannie?
Basically, she said that in 4 or 5 generations, there aren't going to be any heterosexual people left. Um, During a Facebook Live broadcast on May 28th, she said, they just want you to think that all of a sudden the entire population is steadily turning gay or turning trans. Probably in about 4 or 5 generations, no one will be straight anymore. Everyone will either be gay or trans or non-conforming, whatever the list of 50 or 60 options there are. I just want to say, God, let this come to pass. I mean, come on. Exactly, Dragamora. Let us all be gay. Let us make this world queer. Um,
Let us all be bi. Let us not make
right.
such a big fucking deal about it. God.
Yeah, Heather, that's it. There would be more straight if they could live their, lives like they want to. No, I'm just saying. Um, the woman doesn't the woman doesn't care about logic or anything like that. Um, and I wouldn't go that far, Dragamora. Um, there's a lot of hate in the queer community, and a lot of it can be internalized hate, and a lot of it can be interpersonal hate. And I've been finding that out as I have been introduced to the queer community. Yeah, I know you didn't say there's none, but yeah, there is definitely some that we need to work better at getting rid of. And I can only hope that we could eventually, in some way, in 4 or 5 generations, get rid of the stressing about gender and sexuality.
Mhm.
In 80 to 100 years, wouldn't it be wonderful that no one has to worry about gender or sexuality issues? Wouldn't it be great if we eradicated the desire to end somebody's lives just because of their gender or their sexuality?
Yeah, and it's we've seen the example in the past. We are still not to a place where we're what they had called a few years ago post-racist America. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that, but you don't have segregated water fountains because the general population was afraid that they would catch something from dirty people of color, right? Like that was a real belief that there was a danger of like essentially catching cooties
Yeah.
from um, dual use water fountains,
Yeah.
that everybody could use. And
Mhm.
so we're seeing a lot of that now, that fear of oh my god, this is going to ruin everything. And in a few years, unfortunately, this is the issue now, and this is the big hot button issue, and they keep saying it. Well, when the boogeyman never comes, and you know no big wave of anything happens, and everything, the status quo still stays and keeps moving forward, then it'll die down. And you're right, we will get to a place where hopefully hopefully people can be like, oh, I'm attracted to that person, and that's okay. I don't have to be afraid of it or whatever. It's just like, it's just, that is the truth.
Yeah, and it is the way things are. And yeah,
Um, then Marjorie Taylor Greene uh, perpetuated the myth about the Uvalde shooter and said that they were into cross dressing.
yeah. She said in her Facebook broadcast that he clearly had a lot of mental issues going on, as was shown with him wearing eyeliner, cross dressing, a lot of his language being a loner. So, again, the ignorance is breathtaking. Um, because
Next,
normally, while she is talking, no one can breathe because she sucks all of the oxygen out of the atmosphere. Um, and let's get our last one with Marjorie because
let's
she's
go.
more
So
great.
she wants to ban kids from going to drag shows and quote unquote strip clubs. What innocuous places is she calling strip clubs here?
Absolutely. Um, she said that there should be no federal funding for any school that intentionally confuses children about gender or sexuality. Any teacher or school employee caught doing so should be fined and lose all benefits. She wrote that she could care less what two consenting adults do sexually, nor do a judge, but then implied that wearing a dress in front of a child is adults training children sexually, both mentally and physically. We must protect children from grooming, predators, and abusers in every possible way. Now, all of that was built around her basically saying that drag queens and strippers are the same thing.
Yeah, okay. Fine, sure, fine, whatever.
She said, it's most likely that she was talking about a gay bar in Dallas that held a family friendly Pride Month event where kids were in the presence of a drag show. The event was swarmed by a group of conservative Christians, and they shouted obscenities at the children in attendance. We actually have a news story about this one, the Crystal Fascist story. Um, but Green is basically coming out, and just equating, you know, drag queens to strippers and saying, well, you know, that was basically them um, putting kids in a place of a uh, sexually explicit show. Now, here's the funny thing. One of the responses that I've seen to Marjorie Taylor Greene saying we should ban access from children to go into drag queen shows was mated with a conservative individual taking a very proud picture of their two kids surrounded by Hooters girls.
Yep. All right, I don't want to make things too difficult for Kari here. So we're actually going to end up sort of bouncing around in the articles because of the order we have them here. But we'll get back to some of these topics again in a second. For now, we're moving over to over across the pond here as the BBC says an article on trans women did not meet accuracy standards. What's going on in this one?
Okay, this goes all the way back to a story that we reported on. I can't even remember when um, we were talking about. The BBC released an article basically calling transgender women rapists and predators, and there was no editorial um, filtering on this. It went through with as much bad information as you could possibly imagine about transgender women. It was completely written from a turf perspective.
Mhm.
The BBC finally ran this through their accuracy standards because what it was, the claim was lesbians are being pressured into sex by transgender women, equating to coercive rape on the part of transgender women. After a large number of complaints and very vocal complaints, um, the BBC's Executive Complaints Unit has ruled that the piece fell beneath the broadcaster's expected standards in 3 different ways and has ordered that it be updated. However, they also said it remained a legitimate piece of journalism that explored an important topic. The article was cited for its or criticized for its use of an unscientific survey by the lesbian campaign group Get the L Out, which claimed that 56% of the respondents had reported being pressured or coerced to accept a trans woman as a sexual partner. Now, I want to stop right there for just a second. I actually interacted with an individual, not from the UK, but from the US, who made those exact claims that transgender women are forcing lesbians to accept transgender women as sexual partners. Now, that is something that the Get the L Out movement, a turf movement, has been very vocal about, that it has been transgender women coercing lesbians, it has been transgender women attacking lesbians, and that it continues to go on and on and on, that, transgender women are basically predators. But this stuff is crossing over into the US, and it is basically saying that trans activism is erasing lesbians. So much like Marjorie Taylor Greene, we are trying to make lesbians trans. This is the arguments that we are using. Um, the article from BBC was also criticized for failing to make it clear that the Get the L Out group is an activist group trying to remove transgender access in the public.
Hmm.
And finally, the third issue, an individual who was quoted in the piece later described trans women as vile, weak, and disgusting. Now that issue has already been resolved, but the issue is that the entire article has been found to fall under the BBC's standards of quality.
I don't think it needed much investigation or much rigor applied to it to understand that on the very surface.
Right.
But
Yeah.
whatever. Okay. All right. As I said, we're going to kind of jump around because of the order the articles fell in here. And now we're going back to flashcards and that issue. The police were called to the school after the teacher resigned for using Pride flashcards. I believe we kind of talked about this aspect a little bit too. What was happening here?
So when the teacher resigned, um, a group of individuals um, basically began to threaten the school. Um, Police were called to the campus yesterday in light of the shooting in Uvalde. Even though there were no direct threats, there were no confirmed threats, the school felt like it would be safest to bring police protection in case um,
Hmm.
right wing groups might want to correct behaviors, which does go along with not the companion article, but the next article that talks about the right wing group publishing a map of woke schools.
Yeah, that's very chilling. And it was shortly after the Uvalde uh,
Right.
incident, and oof, yeah, that's when we talk about articles of people claiming they're going to target LGBT folks during this month, now having this and this woke
Yeah.
schools list. This is terrifying. What's happening as we go a little deeper in this one?
Okay, so the Liberty Alliance is a Missouri-based anti-LGBTQIAP plus group. They call themselves a sovereign citizen group. So basically, it is an ideological lynch mob, is what it is. Um, they launched a map where people can submit locations where things like critical race theory or um, LGBTQIAP plus affirming information is shared. And it was released, like you said, right after Uvalde. And the map encourages people to report any schools where these things are happening, where critical race theory is being taught, not that it's being taught as a subject. Critical race theory is a college level program. There's theory behind it that is being taught within things like history and those type of subjects, but it is not being taught as a theory to 14-year-olds. Any place that would try to be supportive of LGBTQIA plus kids, any of these places, they are allowing, say, come on in, report this on the map. What it does is it creates target zones for anyone who may feel like they need to step up and defend children from the left.
Mm.
And we've already seen what they think about us.
Yeah, this is more of what we saw in Texas with the abortion law. You just basically deputizing bounty hunters
Yep.
um, to take matters into their own hands and just go do dangerous, horrible things without any due process, without any. It's just vigilantism, and uh, it's in a way like if something comes of this, like it's domestic terrorism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which side note that triggered a little ping in my brain. The shooter in Buffalo who shot up the African American community was charged with domestic terrorism, which carries a much higher, much more significant penalty and prison time. So that's a good thing.
That is.
Um, this one's a bit disappointing. The gay slash trans panic defense leads to an accused killer's acquittal in Virginia. What's going on here?
So we have been talking from the very beginning about trans panic defense, gay panic defense, where an individual will commit a violent crime against a member of the LGBTQIP plus community, then claim that it was out of an altered level of consciousness. They did it out of panic or fear and weren't in full control of their actions. So on Friday, a jury found former Virginia Tech football player, um, I am going to mess this name up. So, Isamimin Etute, who was 19, not guilty of second-degree murder in the beating death of Jerry Paul Smith. Smith was 40 and had an encounter with Etute in Smith's apartment. They had met on Tinder, and Etute thought Smith was a woman named Angie. Smith and Etute encountered, they had a very open sexual encounter. Etute still thought Smith was a woman. We do not know if Smith is transgender, but his family did say he is a gay man, was a gay man. Atute returned to Smith's home to determine their gender, realized that he was a man, and began beating him. Um, the defense attorney entered in this argument. Smith was a deceitful and dishonest man who defrauded young men for his own sexual gratification. Who is the real victim here? This was a wicked sexual ruse. Police found a knife hidden under Smith's mattress, leading the attorney to say, who would be more likely to resort to violence? Who was more likely to be the aggressor? The man who hid the knife or this goofy, gullible kid?
I really think that that is sort of answered in the trial itself. I feel like in the situation that's already made clear.
Yeah. Now, here is the part where this becomes a double tragedy. Virginia passed a law last year that outlawed gay panic or trans panic defense. It only did so in homicide or assault cases. Virginia's law did not go into effect until July 1st of last year, and the judge did not advise the jury about it, granting a request from the defense team. The attorney basically said, because of Smith's dishonesty, the attorney denied that his defense of this individual did not amount. He said it did not amount to a gay or trans panic. I don't believe that the new law would have been applicable to the facts of this case anyway. That's not what led to the death. Here's what led to the death, y'all. State medical examiner testified that most of the bones in Smith's face were broken. He had bleeding and swelling inside his brain, and he had multiple teeth knocked out. This was
Doesn't really sound like a confused, helpless teenager to me.
this was a violent crime.
Mhm.
This was this individual becoming so enraged and feeling such shame. Yes, I know, hearsay and speculation. But
Yeah,
becoming so enraged and ashamed that he transferred all of that onto a human being.
yeah. Shame is not a defense for murder. You
No.
know, it's not. It you know where I don't understand this. You know, there's litigation. You can sue someone for misleading. Like that's like the whole point of the system. Like you're not supposed to take things into your own hands and be able to murder people. This is ridiculous. You know, gay the this I don't even understand whether or not you consider the gay panic defense viable. Like morally it's not right. It's
Yeah.
you can't murder someone because they tricked you. You can't go on a killing spree on April 1st and be like, well, people deceived me.
Yeah.
And I was ashamed that I got, I fell for the hand buzzer thing, and so I killed a person, and it's fine because like I was misled, I was deceived, and that is the crime.
Yeah, exactly. Um, this is going to continue. even in the face of laws that outline that outright illegalize panic defenses with regard to gay and trans individuals. This
Mhm.
is going to continue. This is going to continue to be used in defense of individuals who are violent, in defense of people who are um, not willing to accept responsibility for their own behaviors.
Mhm. All right, let's move on to one that you alluded to earlier, the Christo fascists that took it upon themselves to go and scream obscenities at kids.
Yeah, you gotta love Christians who are willing to tell you you need to watch your mouth. There may be kids around, actually turning around and shouting obscenities at children. Um, so we had commented on a um, location in Dallas, um, when a group of conservative Christians showed up to the event. It was a family friendly event. It was not, explicit in any way, but they began to shout and scream and basically um, accuse the adults who were being a part of this of abusing these children and, of course, grooming. One of the protesters shouted through a bullhorn, "I only have one question. Why would you want to put an axe wound between your son's legs?" Um, police were involved. They shooed them away from the front, but some of the people had purchased tickets. They went inside. They filmed what was going on. They tried to interrupt the performances. They tried to intimidate patrons. They posted videos of the kids on social media without permission, which is a big no-no. The event was held outside of normal business hours. It was family friendly, so the rules as far as keeping children out of that place did not apply. Um, the event and the counter event was organized by a right wing comedian, Alex Stein, and he posted videos of people denigrating children and hurling slurs at LGBTQ plus people. Y'all, I do not deny for 1 minute that people are the reason why I do not have faith anymore. People like that are why I don't have faith anymore. And as long as we continue to allow people like that to be represented within the church, no one is going to want to be a part of what they believe in.
Dragonmore makes a good point. Their rules don't matter to them just when it comes to everyone else. Yes, the great hypocrisy of the right.
So,
Moving. Oh, go ahead.
Dragon Lord, I actually just saw some content today on that very thing. It is based on a philosophy of who is in and who is out. As long as you are in, you can get away with hypocrisy. As long as you are in, you can do the things that you accuse others of being guilty of because you are in. But if you are out, it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how pure your motives are. Just like you said, we don't need to have religion or faith to have morals. Right. But they will never allow us those morals. They will never see our morality as equal, nor will they see it as comparable to them. Sorry, somebody just came in, somebody I love very dearly, and made a wonderful comment. So,
Moving on to an article that sounds positive, but the headline is still showcases something that's very disturbing here for me.
Yes.
Police to finally end undercover bathroom stings after historic Port Authority settlement. So they were sued and they're stopping this stuff, but it's like they were doing undercover bathroom stings. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Let's go.
It,
Let's go into this one, Genevieve.
so the Port Authority in New York. So you gotta love it. Two stories from New York. One of them super LGBTQ plus positive. This one horrifying. So the Port Authority has been patrolling the main bus terminal and arresting people who were perceived as LGBTQ plus on false public lewdness charges. Um, it's not sure when these actually began, but in 2005, the Port Authority was found liable for false lewdness in the Martinez versus the Port Authority case. So essentially, what happened is two plaintiffs were arrested in 2014 after having a plainclothes officer stand in the urinal next to them before falsely accusing them of masturbating in public. Both the federal lawsuit, headed up by the Legal Aid Society and Winston and Strawn LLP, um, cleared them of their charges. But what came out of that was that there had been a discriminatory pattern from the Port Authority in false arrest for public lewdness based on the actual or perceived sexual orientation of the person arrested. There were no actual events. It was only on the perception of who the individual was. So now these have finally been brought to light and they are finally being eliminated. They cannot use bathroom stings anymore in Port Authority um, stations.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. The only thing that this makes me think of is the Good Charlotte lyrics of "Shake it one time, that's okay," or "Shake it once, that's fine. Shake it twice, that's okay. Shake it three times, you're playing with yourself." All right. Yeah, I can't remember which Good Charlotte song is, but I hit my stride in the '90s, and I loved a lot of that stuff. It was great. Okay, gender critical Arthur Helen Joyce, and gender critical is in quotations,
Yes.
says she wants to reduce the number of trans people.
So Helen Joyce wrote the book Trans When Ideology Meets Reality. And she was having an online discussion with Helen Stanland. And what she said was um, she said that the gender critical movement cannot be focused on convincing every person in the UK of its views, and that it instead must get through to the decision makers. And in the meantime, while we're trying to get through to decision makers, we have to try to limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. That's for two reasons. One of them is that every one of these people is a person who's been damaged. And the second one is every one of those people is basically a huge problem to a sane world. Now here's one thing that I want to know. Okay? How on God's green earth can anyone believe that this is a sane world? There is no sanity here.
The world isn't sane or insane. The world just is.
She said, if you've got people, whether they are transitioned, whether they're happily transitioned, whether they're unhappily transitioned, whether they're detransitioned, if you've got people who've disassociated from their sex in some way, every one of those people is someone who needs special accommodation in a sane world where we re acknowledge the truth of sex. And I mean the people who've been damaged by it, the children who've been put through this. Those people deserve every accommodation we can possibly make, but every one of them is a difficulty.
Or difficulty for horrible and messed up ideals, that's for sure. And no, I do not disassociate from my sex or gender more correctly. I embrace it completely. I love my gender. I love being a woman, and I am very excited for everything that's coming ahead of me.
Yeah. My problem with my problem is the contradictory statement at the very end of what I just read. I mean the people who've been damaged by it, those people deserve every accommodation we can possibly make.
Mhm.
What
Except
she
allowing them
means,
to live in peace.
what she means is those people deserve every accommodation we can possibly make to keep them from being who they are,
Hmm.
which means we want to put conversion therapy back at the forefront. We want to bring back the pathologizing of gender identity dysphoria. We want to continue to, champion the idea that transgender women are basically men who are just sexual predators in a dress. We want to continue to use false narratives to demonize an entire group of people just so we can remove them from being a difficulty in our world.
Well, and this is even more diabolical, right? Because it comes at it from a false sense of sympathy that these poor people are damaged and we have to, white savior them, to come in and save them from themselves,
Yeah.
which is just as strong and dangerous a fear tactic as demonizing.
So y'all know my favorite soapbox is the comparing of what we are experiencing right now to the efforts made in US history as well as German history. The people who deserved every accommodation were the indigenous people who were put on reservations. The accommodations that they were given were maggot ridden food, lice and vermin filled blankets. They were not allowed any of their ancestral traditions. German Jews, Romani, gay individuals, they were given every accommodation of a roof over their head and food brought to them at certain times until they were taken to a gas chamber. That's the language right there.
Mhm.
That is the exact same language that they used in the past.
Let's get to some positivity here. This sounds like it's going to be kind of fun based on the headline. A school banned the rainbow flag from being flown. Students and teachers had the best response. What was their clap back here?
At a New Jersey school, um, the Passaic Preparatory Academy, they raised a pride flag last June. Um, but then the Board of Education realized there was no policy covering which flags could be flown. So they worked to implement a policy that only allows for an American flag, a New Jersey state flag, or a school flag to be flown. So the school's Gay Straight Alliance staged a protest involving 75 students approximately, demonstrating against the decision. And school board president came out and said, while we respect and appreciate the many different opinions on this matter, the current flag policy is non-discriminatory. It ensures consistency across the school district with respect to flags. A few weeks prior to the board, flags were hung in nearly every window of the school. The board had declared that flags, do not contradict its policy, as it only encompasses the flagpole and not the other parts of the building. So every building that was front facing had a pride flag of some sort hanging in it.
Nice. That's perfect. Good job, y'all. What should we go to next? We're running a little bit low on time. We got a lot of articles left. Should we move on to Pizza Hut or?
No, let's hop on to the one that I really wanted to get to. Let's go down to Justine Lindsay. Next to the last story, because I think this one is big news.
Okay. NFL's first openly trans cheerleader wants to break down the door for other trans athletes. That's awesome.
It is fabulous. So dancer Justine Lindsay has become a cheerleader for the Carolina Panthers, and she is the first NFL openly trans cheerleader ever signed. So we now have a transgender cheerleader who is going to be a part of the Carolina Panthers program out there. And she has said that what she wants to do is she wants to break down the door. She wants to make it accessible for other people. I think this is fabulous, mostly because, North Carolina sucks. But, more power to her. I hope that she is amazing. I'm not a Panthers fan, but I will tune in at least once or twice to check out her repping the community on the sidelines.
And this is great. She is Black. She has a shaved head, and she's rocking it. I love it. I love it.
More sports news. Let's go ahead and talk about the
baseball players.
Yeah, the Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the baseball players. Several Tampa Bay Ray players removed rainbow logos from their jerseys before taking the field during the team's annual Pride Night. And basically said a lot of it comes down to faith. It's a hard decision because ultimately we all said what we want is them to know that they all are welcome and loved here. Bullshit. When we put it on our bodies, I think a lot of guys decided that it's just a lifestyle that maybe not that they look down on anybody or think differently. Bullshit. It's just that maybe we don't want to encourage it if we believe in Jesus, who's encouraged us to live a lifestyle that would abstain from behavior, from that behavior. Bullshit. Just like Jesus encourages me as a heterosexual male to abstain from sex outside of the confines of bullshit marriage.
Yes, I love the people that completely contradict the message of Jesus by saying that yes, and saying that they're following what Jesus said when it's in many ways the exact opposite. Yeah, I think that's horrible. I think that's pretty reprehensible. To believe that you can say we love and accept you and you're great, but I can't love and accept you.
Right. Yeah.
So
now, you tell your story.
Yes. So I just went, if any of you follow me on social media, actually, yeah, well, I was tagged in it by Adriana. I got to go and meet up a friend in real life, from the trans community on Instagram, and
What?
we went
We're not
to
all figments of your
what's that?
imagination?
What?
We're not all figments of your imagination?
Right? Yes. Um, and we went to a Pride night at the Dodgers. It was a Dodgers Pride night game. We got a free jersey that had the Pride flag on it. It was great. Um, and the thing that I loved is that there were Pride flags everywhere along the top of the stadium. American flag, Pride flag, American flag, Pride flag, and then all of the ads along the home run wall, the outfield wall, were that incorporated the rainbow. And companies like UCLA Health, who I've gone through for all my medical care, it was wonderful to see the representation there and the support. It was great. I loved it. It was really cool. What I wasn't prepared for and what really shocked me was I tuned into a Dodgers game on TV 2 days later, and not a single ad on the outfield wall still contained a rainbow. I was flabbergasted by that, and I was just so shocked to see just how strongly rainbow capitalism that night was, and how duped I had been.
Yeah.
That it was just for that night, just to appeal to the LGBT community. Come to a game, finally feel safe at a Dodger game. Um, you know, Pay us lots of money, buy lots of stuff, and then the next day, no record of us even being there.
Yeah.
Couldn't even last a week, let alone the whole month. Like, it was one day that they had those pride banners up in the outfield fence. At least I have no idea if they've taken down their flags on top of the stadium. I think that'd be a little bit harder to do, but I don't know. Anyways, like I said, I was extremely disappointed with it, and I thought I went from feeling that like this is an organization that supports us to this is rainbow capitalism at its worst.
No. The last story is rainbow capitalism at its worst.
Let's find out here as we talk about. Are we ready to move on to burgers?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, Burger King Austria's new Pride Whoppers have two tops and two bottoms, and gay Twitter has thoughts. Well, of course, because that misses a lot of points there. But Jeannie, what the hell is happening here?
So Burger King Austria released two Pride Whoppers. The ad features a rainbow festooned background, a,
Pretty.
a banner headline that says "Time to be proud," a little thing down to the side that says "Pride Whopper" with a little rainbow encrusted E. And then in German, I don't read German. I'm not going to attempt it. But in the middle, you see a Whopper, which actually looks a hell of a lot better than American Whopper in the middle, where you have lettuce, tomato, onion, pickles, and a burger with just a splash of ketchup pouring through the pickles.
Careful, I'm
But
getting
in
hungry.
one picture, it is two top buns on top and bottom of a burger. And then in the other picture, it's two bottom buns put on top and bottom of the burger. Now, look, I'm all for Pride Month. I'm all for, understanding that companies want to capitalize on trying to get the queer dollar. Pink money is a huge issue in business. But let me tell you something. When you go fucking with a burger, you are committing a crime against culinary humanity. Because, I mean, I have given Emily all the shit for trying to cremate a chicken on her grill. But this far outstrips Emily's desecration of burned flesh. Okay. This is far beyond that because anyone, anyone knows that two tops is too much and two bottoms isn't enough.
Yeah, Shannon says that. Oh, is it Shannon? I thought it was that. Yeah, that doesn't work. Two tops and two bottoms. It doesn't work generally.
No, it doesn't. Two tops is too much. Two bottoms is not enough.
I just love that you continue to perpetuate this myth that I am bad at cooking because of my technique when you have actually had my cooking and you praised it. So how dare you? First off, second off, we have a new grill, and we've done some really good things on it since then.
You
Any,
have chastised me appropriately. I will renounce for this episode all intimations that Emily cannot cook. She can indeed bring some amazing food to the table, and I have enjoyed her cooking in her home, in her presence. So,
well, thank you. And I apologize to everybody here in chat. It has been a very, very long time since there has been a food on fire with Emily episode. So we'll have to work one of those in. We'll have to work one of those in
yeah,
because they were good. They were fun.
they were fun. I do enjoy, you know, giving you shit about cooking.
Yes, I know. It is fun. I enjoy it too. Okay. We have 3 minutes left. Are there any other articles you want to dive into before we bail out of here?
That we can do real quick. Let's see. Netflix is still run by a bastard.
Yeah.
Um, J.K. Rowling complains that trans people, um, you know, are a part of raping prisoners. Uh,
Not the other way around. Not the proven thing that they get sexually harassed more than
right.
anybody else, regardless of which prison they're in.
Yeah. Elon Musk told corporations they shouldn't celebrate Pride. Big huge news! Big huge news up in the medicine. Let me do this one real quick.
There you go.
Gender affirming care cannot be denied by an employer. A federal court rules. A federal court in Georgia has ruled that employers who refuse to cover gender affirming health care for workers are in violation of U.S. civil rights laws. The chief judge of the U.S. District Court in the Middle District of Georgia issued the ruling Thursday. Anna Lang, a sheriff's deputy, sued because she had been repeatedly denied insurance coverage for gender affirming care under the county's employee health plan. But the judge basically came out and said if you deny them equal medical care, it is discriminatory and therefore a violation of their civil rights. So if you work in certain industries and you are told that your care will not be covered, look to your rights, especially in this case.
Nice. Yeah. And like I alluded to before or mentioned that I hope that this follows forward and we're able to sue states that put out legislation about this because it's discriminatory and it needs to be stopped because it's against our constitutional rights of
Right.
equal protection, you know?
So, how does that work with the previous article urging companies not to cover? Well, Florida was basically saying that Medicaid, they issued a statement, a mandate that said that Medicaid could not. That is totally different than a private insurance or even a state insurance program. So, if it is a medical insurance program sponsored through even a state agency, um, you know, it's not Medicaid. It is still a private insurance company, and they can't be denied gender affirming care if that company provides it in other places.
Wonderful. I love ending on a positive note, especially after we cover some just ridiculous silliness, and so I feel good. I feel like we've ended this on a good note. Jeannie, thank
Yeah,
you so much for everything tonight.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Kari in the booth, thank you so much for producing the show tonight. Mods, as always, we appreciate and love all the work you do. Thanks for giving points and keeping the community safe and participating in chat. Everybody here, thank you so much for all your comments tonight. For Genevieve Bergman, I'm Emily Kleckner, signing off, wishing you.
You forgot your own tagline?
I did. Good night and good news.